I appreciate the upgrade, my dear. Cole entered the living room with a grin, casually tossing his sunglasses onto the coffee table. He stood there, exuding an air of overbearing confidence in his impeccably tailored suit and gleaming new shoes, his luggage overflowing with high-end logos. First-class travel to Europe, exquisite hotels, this is the lifestyle I've longed for, Emery. I was powerless to resist. A sudden laugh escaped me. What's the source of the laughter? He snapped, his brow furrowing in discontent. Oh, Cole, I remarked, shaking my head in disbelief. Your actions have consequences you cannot begin to fathom. I am Emery, a 34-year-old individual navigating the tapestry of life. For the past 7 years, I have navigated the complexities of cybersecurity while being married to a man who, beneath his charming facade, revealed himself to be a veritable minefield of warning signs. Cole had a way with words, a visionary spirit, effortlessly transforming every idea into a captivating scheme. In the midst of it all, I was the architect of those plans, maintaining a stable career while he flitted from one ill-conceived venture to another. I turned a blind eye to the warning signs, the shroud of financial secrecy, the endless excuses for his absence of income, all because I yearned to believe in the strength of our partnership. However, at the hour of 2 a.m. last week, Cole found himself ensnared in a blunder from which his usual charisma could not extricate him. I had been resting peacefully upstairs when the event unfolded. He likely bided his time, ensuring I was completely unconscious before stealthily making his way to my laptop. My experience in cybersecurity had instilled in me a vigilance for potential scams, yet I never anticipated that those skills would be necessary within the confines of my own home. That evening, Cole took to my laptop to delve into one of my credit card accounts. He meticulously recorded the details, captured a few images with his phone, and stealthily returned to bed as if nothing had transpired. The following morning, as I savored my coffee, I became aware of a deluge of notifications on my phone. As I launched my banking app, my eyes widened at the sight of nearly $50,000 in charges, luxurious designer clothing, opulent watches, and first-class flights to Paris. A wave of realization washed over me, and my heart dropped as the pieces fell into alignment. Cole was the mastermind behind this. Indeed, he certainly was. Yet, rather than succumbing to panic, I found myself smiling. The card he had employed was not linked to a personal account. It was a fictitious credit card linked to a training initiative I conduct at my workplace. The purpose is to instruct organizations on identifying and addressing fraudulent activities. With each transaction, an automatic alert is set in motion, promptly reaching the authorities. Cole remained blissfully unaware that he had unwittingly become the subject of a fascinating case study. That very morning, I reached out to my lawyer, Brooke. I can hardly expect you to believe this, I said, as I began to recount every detail with precision. She let her laughter flow freely, unrestrained. Hold on, let me make sure I understand this, she said, laughter bubbling up between her words. Did he really steal a dummy card? The one associated with identifying fraudulent activities? Precisely, I replied, my tone steady yet tinged with a sense of fulfillment. It seems he was unaware of his actions. He likely believed he was being quite astute. Astute? Brooke remarked. He's quite foolish. Each transaction he initiates is bound to raise a red flag. Have the authorities reached out to you yet? Not at this moment, but it's merely a question of time. Throughout the remainder of the week, I remained silent, observing how far Cole would push the boundaries. A few days later, he placed a note on the counter. Carving out a moment for my own reflection, do not stay awake for me. I understood precisely what that implied. He was indulging in a lavish lifestyle overseas, funded by my stolen money. Each evening, I observed the cascade of fraud alerts unfold before me. Luxurious dining establishments, opulent accommodations, and lavish retail experiences. Every notification resonated as a minor triumph. 3 days into his rampage, I received a call from Agent Cross, a federal investigator tasked with the case. He stated that we have uncovered considerable fraudulent activity associated with your account. Are you aware of who could be accountable? Indeed, I responded without a moment's pause. My spouse. A moment of silence lingered in the air. Your spouse? I detailed the circumstances, emphasizing that the card was integral to a cybersecurity initiative. Agent Cross emitted a soft whistle. "That's a novel idea," he remarked. "A formal statement will be required. However, considering what we've already highlighted, he finds himself in grave peril." As Cole stepped back through the door, his sense of self had swelled from a week steeped in indulgence. I stood poised, anticipation coursing through me. He strolled into the living room as if the world outside had ceased to exist, adorned with the trophies of his illicit adventure. "Appreciate the upgrade," he remarked, a confident smirk playing on his lips. "You have truly surpassed all expectations this time." Laughter erupted from within me, unstoppable and joyous. Cole's brow furrowed, a clear indication that he anticipated my anger. "What's so amusing?" he inquired, his tone cutting through the air. "Oh, Cole," I remarked, shaking my head in disbelief. "Prepare to uncover the truth." Cole let his designer duffel bag fall to the floor, producing a self-satisfied thud. "Seriously though, Emery," he remarked, casually shrugging off his tailored jacket and letting it fall over the couch. "You ought to have mentioned that card to me long before now. Envision the delightful experiences we might have shared." I rested against the kitchen counter, my arms folded across my chest. "And what, precisely, did you envision as the conclusion to this scenario?" He wore a sly grin as he tossed his shoes aside. "You seem to carry a certain tension when it comes to finances. It's not as if you lacked the means to acquire it. I thought you would move past it once you realized the joy it brought me." His sheer audacity might have sparked fury, were it not for its underlying pathetic nature. I stifled a chuckle, fully aware that each moment he spent boasting was merely another nail driven into his own coffin. "So, the watches, the flights, the hotels, did you really believe all of that was merely a gift from me?" "Not thought," he declared, gesturing toward himself. "Negative. It's high time you let go a little." I offered a smile, lips pressed together in a way that revealed nothing of my thoughts. "I would wager on that." As soon as Cole vanished into the shower, his off-key humming filling the air, I reached for my phone and sent a message to Brooke. "He has returned. Prepared to advance." Her response came without delay. "Flawless. I shall notify Agent Cross." In the course of the last week, Brooke and Agent Cross diligently worked on building the case against Cole. Each of his actions had been monitored, every charge carefully recorded. From the chic designer boutiques to the opulent hotels of Paris, his lavish lifestyle crafted an image of a person who believed themselves beyond reach. Cole remained blissfully unaware of the abyss he had carved for himself. Agent Cross had confidently informed me that the fraud alert stemming from the fictitious account had indeed set in motion a comprehensive investigation. He had mentioned during our last call that we would bring him in for questioning once you were ready. However, I would suggest allowing him to approach it in his own way. The greater his confidence, the more favorable the outcome. As Cole's off-key singing reverberated from the bathroom, a surreal sense of calm washed over me. For years, I allowed him to exploit my trust, my kindness, my sense of stability. Yet again, he was on the brink of confronting the repercussions of his misjudgment regarding my capabilities. Once Cole appeared, swathed in a soft towel and beaming as if the weight of the world had lifted, he collapsed onto the couch. "You should have seen Paris," he said, as he reached into his bag and retrieved a gleaming gold watch. The shops and the restaurants unfolded before me, reminiscent of a dreamlike vision. "That sounds absolutely incredible," I remarked, leaning against the doorway. "Elaborate further, please." He embarked on an elaborate narrative of his week-long escapade, punctuated by grandiose hand movements and superfluous anecdotes regarding the champagne's caliber at a certain rooftop establishment. Each word resonated as an accusation, a revelation he was unaware he was uttering. Unbeknownst to him, I was capturing every word of our conversation on my phone, the file poised for delivery to Agent Cross. "What's the most delightful aspect?" Cole lifted the watch, his gaze lingering on its intricate design. "No one had an inkling, not even you." As dawn broke, Brooke and I convened over steaming cups of coffee to solidify the timeline. "He's got no defense," she remarked, her fingers gliding over the evidence we had gathered. "The fraud alerts, the charges, his conversation from last night, it's all indisputable. Agent Cross stands poised to apprehend him for interrogation." They are collaborating with the local authorities to carry out the arrest. I nodded, feeling the heaviness of it all begin to take root within me. What unfolds next? Brooke explained that he will confront a series of charges, encompassing fraud, identity theft, and the unauthorized use of a financial account. Considering the substantial sum at stake, it certainly won't be a mere reprimand. What would be the most favorable outcome for him? He strikes an agreement and sidesteps incarceration. What if the situation takes a turn for the worse? He faces a lengthy sentence in prison. A fragment of my being yearned to extend sympathy toward him. Yet, the image of his self-satisfied smirk lingered in my mind, the manner in which he paraded his ill-gotten treasures, utterly indifferent to the havoc he had wreaked. This was more than a mere error. It was a recurring theme of self-centeredness and a sense of entitlement that I had failed to recognize for far too long. As the evening wore on, Cole reclined on the couch, his fingers gliding over his phone's screen, when suddenly, the distinct sound of a knock echoed through the air, drawing my attention to the door. My heart raced, not from fear, but from a thrilling sense of anticipation. I approached the door and swung it open, unveiling Agent Cross alongside two uniformed officers poised on the porch. "Good evening, Ms. Miller," Cross remarked, his voice carrying a blend of professionalism and warmth. "Is Cole at home?" "He's right inside," I remarked, moving aside to grant them entry. "Please, make yourselves at home." Cole lifted his gaze from the screen, a furrow forming on his brow as confusion settled in. "What is happening?" he inquired, adjusting his posture with newfound resolve. Agent Cross advanced toward him, exuding a serene command that seemed to constrict the space around them. "Cole Miller, you find yourself the subject of an investigation concerning numerous allegations of credit card fraud and the unauthorized utilization of financial accounts. We would appreciate your presence for an inquiry." Cole's complexion drained of color, his self-assurance dissipating in a heartbeat. "What is this?" "No, this must be a mistake," he stammered, his eyes searching mine for reassurance. "Emery, convey to them, this is utterly absurd." I folded my arms, angling my head just a touch. "I'm not sure, Cole, but it seems you've been quite occupied these days. Perhaps you ought to elucidate it for them." As the officers recited his rights and guided him toward the exit, Cole's protests echoed in the air. "This is not something you can accomplish. Emery, this is a carefully orchestrated scheme. As my wife, shouldn't you be by my side?" "Amusing," I remarked, propping myself against the doorframe. I was under the impression that husbands were not meant to pilfer from their wives. "It seems we are both discovering new insights today." Cole's fierce demeanor faltered, giving way to a palpable sense of urgency in his eyes. "This will not go unpunished." A smile graced my lips. "Ah, Cole, I have indeed." The door closed with a decisive click as the officers led Cole away, plunging the living room into an unsettling silence. I lingered for a moment, gazing at the vacant spot where he had occupied mere minutes before. My heart raced, not out of fear, but from the profound gravity of the moment. He had vanished. At last, unmistakably departed. Yet, this was far from the end, not at this moment. Approximately an hour later, Brooke made the call. She spoke with a calm yet resolute tone. "He's with Agent Cross now. They have begun to interrogate him." According to Cross, Cole is already attempting to twist the narrative to suit his own interests. "Of course he is," I replied, rolling my eyes in exasperation. "Allow me to take a wild guess. Is he assuming the role of the victim?" "Exactly," Brooke responded with a wry chuckle. "He asserts that you authorized him to use the card. Rest assured. Amidst the fraud alerts, the charges, and your recording, he is left with no hope." On the following morning, Agent Cross reached out with an update. "All that we require is at our disposal," he remarked. "Your husband, or rather, your soon-to-be ex-husband, has confessed to utilizing the card, yet he maintains that he was unaware of its connection to a fraud detection program. He's attempting to shift the responsibility for the mix-up onto you." "That seems to be the case," I remarked, reclining in my chair. "What unfolds next?" Cross explained that they are proceeding with the charges. He is confronted with several charges of fraud and the illicit use of a financial account. Considering the substantial sum at stake, he will undoubtedly face serious repercussions. The buyer protection programs have identified his luxury purchases, leading to their reimbursement. You bear no responsibility for agreement. An immediate and overwhelming sense of relief washed over me. For days, I bore the burden of Cole's choices, anxious that he had somehow evaded detection. Yet, in the wake of Cross's unwavering confidence, I came to understand the true magnitude of my triumph. I expressed my gratitude, acknowledging all that had been done. Cross replied, "No need for thanks. This case practically presented itself to us. Your handling of this was nothing short of brilliant." The aftermath struck Cole with a force I hadn't anticipated. The news of his arrest traveled swiftly through our shared circle of friends and acquaintances. It wasn't long before the meticulously constructed facade of the charming, carefree husband started to fall apart. Nicole, the woman I had my suspicions about, seemingly abandoned him the instant she learned of the allegations. The designer items he had displayed with such pride were seized. The flights he had reserved were cancelled. Then, the banks took the drastic step of freezing his accounts. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. Despite my reservations, I picked up the phone, and as expected, it was Cole on the other end. "Emery," he began, his voice a hushed whisper, laden with tension. I wish to have a conversation with you." A chuckle escaped me uncontrollably. "Cole, your sole task is to determine how to articulate your position to the judge." "Please," he said, his voice tinged with a sense of urgency. "I made a mistake, all right? I never intended for it to escalate to this point." I found myself in a moment of contemplation. "What exactly?" I interjected, my tone icy. "Are you really attempting to take $50,000 from me? Merely wishing I would remain oblivious? Are you relying on my blindness or my capacity for forgiveness to keep me from putting an end to this?" A prolonged silence lingered on the other end of the line. At last, he whispered, "I believed you loved me." I exhaled sharply, my fury reaching a boiling point. "I did, Cole. I cherished the image of the person I believed you to be. Yet, the individual who took from me, who deceived me, who believed he could escape the consequences, is not someone I could ever hold in my heart." Before he had the chance to reply, I ended the call. A week later, Brooke reached out to share the news that Cole had agreed to a plea deal. She explained that he is evading incarceration. However, he will be required to return every penny he attempted to take and fulfill his community service obligations. Moreover, his credit will remain in disarray for years to come. "That seems quite appropriate," I remarked. He had always yearned for the lavish existence. Now he has the opportunity to glimpse the existence of those who dwell in a different realm. Brooke let out a melodious laugh. "You are managing this situation with a grace that surpasses what many would demonstrate." "How amusing," I remarked, a smile playing on my lips. For years, I believed that Cole was the glue that kept our marriage intact. I believed it was his charm, his ambition, and his grand ideas that propelled us onward. Yet now, clarity has dawned upon me. I was the one bearing the weight of it all. He was merely a burden. On the day the divorce papers arrived, I filled a glass with wine and settled onto the couch, surveying the apartment that now felt entirely and utterly my own. Cole's absence was not a detriment. It was a blessing, an opportunity to reconstruct my existence free from the ever-present gloom of his self-centeredness. As I savored my wine, memories flooded back to the instant he entered, parading his ill-gotten treasures and taunting me for the so-called enhancement he believed he had bestowed upon himself. He had exuded confidence, utterly convinced of his own brilliance. Now, he found himself bearing the consequences. After a long stretch, I finally experienced a sense of genuine freedom. This marked not merely the conclusion of a union. It marked the dawn of a life I could truly claim as my own. The apartment was enveloped in an unsettling silence in the days following Cole's arrest. His belongings had vanished. What meager remnants remained unsold or crammed into his designer duffel bag. Yet, the atmosphere seemed to lift. It was as if the burden of his treachery had been entirely removed. After years of burden, I finally found solace in my own home, free from the oppressive weight of his presence. One afternoon, Brooke made a visit to deliver the last of the paperwork. "How are you managing these days?" she inquired, perched on the couch with her characteristic straightforwardness. I confessed, as I offered her a cup of coffee, that it was better than I had anticipated. It's peculiar, yet I find that anger has faded away, leaving only, freed from tension. Her smile held a knowing glint. You have already emerged victorious. You didn't merely endure this, Emery, you emerged with greater strength. As we sifted through the documents, meticulously finalizing the particulars of Cole's financial restitution, that thought lingered in my mind. It transcended mere financial concerns, yet the thought of repaying every single cent brought a sense of satisfaction. It was a moment of truly embracing my freedom. For years, I allowed Cole to set the terms of our relationship, believing it was simpler to maintain harmony. Yet, I have come to understand that a tranquility forged through compromise and silence is not true peace. A week later, the official letter of divorce arrived, nestled within an unassuming envelope that seemed far too small to hold something so significant. I paused for a heartbeat, allowing the gravity of the moment to envelop me, before I ripped it open. My gaze traversed the intricate lines of legal jargon until I unearthed the words that held the greatest significance, concluded and unchangeable. I settled into the kitchen chair, the letter cradled in my hands, granting myself a fleeting pause for contemplation. This was not the existence I had envisioned when I took Cole's hand in marriage. I envisioned a foundation of stability, a bond of partnership, and a future crafted from shared trust. Yet, as I surveyed the sanctuary I had crafted for my own, it dawned on me that I possessed something far greater. Liberty, insight, and the realization that I possessed a strength beyond what I had ever acknowledged. That evening, Emma arrived bearing a bottle of wine and a carton filled with my favorite takeout. To new beginnings, she declared, lifting her glass high, and to the complete dumpster fire you just left behind. I chuckled, gently tapping my glass against hers, to always strive for what I truly deserve. In the weeks that followed, I began to assemble the vision of what my new life might entail. I transformed the apartment, infusing it with vibrant hues and unique details that truly reflected my essence. At long last, I embarked on the solo vacation I had envisioned for years. Wandering along the shoreline, embracing a tranquility that arises solely from momentarily shedding the weight of the world. Cole made several attempts to connect again, utilizing mutual acquaintances, sending vague apologies via email, and even crafting a comically misguided letter asserting his transformation. Yet, I chose not to reply. Silence enveloped the moment, leaving no words to be spoken. He had chosen his path, and I had chosen mine. Occasionally, whispers of his life would reach me through the tangled threads of rumor. He grappled with the challenge of securing employment, his name marred by the shadow of fraud allegations. He had returned to his parents' home, seemingly still holding on to the notion that he could charm his way out of any predicament. I felt no sympathy for him. In truth, a sense of relief washed over me. He was no longer my concern. A month after all had been settled, I found myself by the window of my apartment, cradling my morning coffee and observing the city awaken beneath me. The sunlight streamed into the living room, illuminating the fresh coat of paint I had chosen, my beloved hue of blue. The atmosphere had shifted, no longer resembling a battleground. It resonated with a sense of belonging. It was serene, uniquely mine, and brimming with potential. As I reflected on the path that led me to this moment, I found myself immersed in the intricacies of my journey. For years, I held steadfast to the allure of marriage, to the vision of crafting a life alongside Cole. I had dismissed the quiet intuition within me that hinted at something amiss, that cautioned me his allure was merely a facade for self-interest. Yet, at this moment, a significant realization dawned upon me. Departing was not a sign of defeat. It was power. That weekend, Emma and I gathered for brunch, a fresh tradition we had begun in the wake of Cole's departure. As we savored mimosas and waffles, she inquired, "So, what's next for you?" A smile crept across my face, a delightful blend of excitement and tranquility that had been absent from my life for far too long. At this moment, my attention is solely directed towards my own journey. Work is progressing wonderfully, and I've been contemplating the idea of a more extended getaway, perhaps to a serene location nestled in the mountains. She lifted her glass high. That's the kind of sentiment I appreciate. You are worthy of it. After years of uncertainty, I finally experienced the exhilarating sensation of making choices solely for my own sake. Unyielding resolve, unwavering confidence, simply the liberty to exist according to my own desires. From time to time, I would receive news about Cole through our shared acquaintances. He grappled with the daunting task of reconstructing his existence, shifting from one meagerly compensated position to another, all the while striving to repay the debts that weighed heavily upon him. The elegant suits and lavish getaways had faded into memory, supplanted by a stark reality he had not anticipated. I chose not to linger on it. He had chosen his path, and I had chosen mine. The most recent communication I received from him arrived in the form of an email, a lengthy and meandering apology that struck me as more an exercise in self-pity than a genuine expression of remorse. I glanced at the opening lines before discarding it without a response. Closure from him was not something I required. I had already discovered it within me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself perched on the balcony, a glass of wine in hand, lost in contemplation of the myriad experiences that had shaped my journey, the treachery, the anguish of lost love, the struggle to regain what rightfully belonged to me. This moment was the culmination of everything that had come before. Though the journey was fraught with challenges, the rewards made it all worthwhile. A sense of anger and bitterness had faded away, leaving me with a calm acceptance of what had transpired. In truth, a sense of gratitude washed over me. Cole's betrayal compelled me to face my own resilience, to cease my compromises and begin placing myself at the forefront. I had come to embrace my instincts, to cherish my autonomy, and to resolutely refuse to allow anyone else to steer the course of my existence. With the city lights dancing in the distance, I lifted my glass toward the vast night sky. "Here's to me," I murmured softly. "Here's to new beginnings." With that, I turned the page on Cole, prepared to welcome whatever lay ahead.